Hello. This is another photo progression of a painting I did this year, 2018, in the summertime. And this is the Charlestown Marina, which is in Boston, Charlestown, Boston. And the view was actually a very crowded view. So the first thing I did was from the image I sketched, I decided not to use all the elements and focus on the uh, boats, but basically leading the eye to the marina itself and the people there. So you'll see what I mean when I show you the progress of this painting. Again, it was a very crowded scene. Marinas in the summertime can be very, very crowded, and you can get lost in exactly understanding the structure of what you're seeing. So on a first step, I did the blocking. Basically, this is the first time I actually used a linen canvas. I did not like it. I am an amateur painter, and this is an acrylic painting. On the third time I used linen, I really started to like it. But going from cotton to linen, the absorption of the material from the acrylics is very different. And so I was a bit frustrated. You can see a lot of the areas where I was trying to cover the canvas, and still the linen is toned, as I put in there. It was a toned linen canvas. Um, Again, I ended up liking it a lot. And the toned canvas is on that nice warm earth color. So what I did was basically to sort of block in the shapes. There were a couple of boats that had a very distinctive structure. I wanted to make sure I captured it correctly. And the marina, as you will see in the next slide, pay attention to it. I painted the original very small. I don't know why I always do that. I changed dramatically the size of the elements, especially architectural elements. I'm not very good at drawing. So you will see that in the next one, the proportion of the size of the marina is corrected in the next image that I'm going to show you. So again, this was a tone canvas, and where you do see the earth color is actually not painted. I wanted to make sure that I highlighted with white. It's really off-white, but it does look very white. I highlighted the lightest lights, and I also tried to start putting in the darkest darks. The bottom, I mean, I did not want to put a horizon line. Originally, I could see the horizon, and I could see the road at the back end of the Boston Harbor. But I thought it was going to be more interesting to the viewer if the water, actually the sea, takes you back into the linen canvas or the canvas in the view, and you don't have a horizon. So I decided not to put a horizon line. Everything was going to be water. And of course, the tone and the saturation changes in the back. The tone is lighter and there's less saturated colors, whereas in the front you see more saturated blues and greens, and maybe I put a couple of uh, maybe a little bit of Alizarin Crimson in there. But this is the stage of the original block in. So large shapes, try to make sure that your perspective lines are okay, and basically the shapes that you are depicting in there are more or less correct. I also wanted to put the darkest reflections from that correspond to the images that we're seeing, make sure that they're there, and also identify, as I mentioned, the darkest darks and the lightest lights. On a second stage, you can see now how the house in the marina has now become the size that it should have been from the beginning. It was way too small. So I actually ended up painting the pier in the back. That pier in the back you actually cannot see because it's full of boats. This marina is very busy, is very popular, but I know that there's a pier in there. That's Pier 13. And I wanted to paint the pier and not have that many boats sticking in the painting. I also wanted to make sure that the marina, the colors of the marina, reflected the light that was coming. It's a difficult light to depict because it was probably noontime, so the sun was probably right above the images, and the shadows are only reflected when you have like the ledge in there. And you can see the white of the windows. I can insinuate the shadow there by painting slightly gray on the top and then lighter. It's not really white, it's off-white with a little bit of yellow ochre. And then the shadows of the lights on the edge of the roof are actually creating a shadow under them. But again, it's correcting the size, making sure that the elements in the photo are more complete. As you can see, the boats are a bit more elaborated now, and I started painting some of the piers in between the boats, and also the people that were sitting in the marina. That was a very nice element, and I wanted to make that sort of the focus of the attention. I don't know if I achieved that or not. The composition is a composition that's very skewed to the upper left, which is unusual, but I sort of like doing that so I can paint a lot of the water, which I like to paint a lot. I do like painting water. So besides resizing the marina, adding the shadows, I added also the back pier. Now, the important thing on the back pier is to push it back. The tone is really very light compared to the tone of the pier in the front. I wanted to really push that back. I could have probably made it more purple. I ended up mixing a lot of the Pthalo blue and Alizarin Crimson with whites, and it does look like a gray, undescriptive gray, but I did want to make sure that it was receded to the back. And then, on the shape of the boats, I did work a lot on, especially the first three that we see closer to our eyes, because they were very interesting features, especially that one that has like a tall structure. I don't know about the names of the structures in these boats, but it's a tall boat with this sort of a glass, that's tinted glass, and I wanted to make sure that I could depict at least different shapes of boats and different sizes of the boats. The other interesting thing is this marina has the larger boats at the end, and that made a very strange sort of painting. The sizes are correct because the boats that are closer to us are smaller, but it just doesn't work very well when you are trying to depict some sort of perspective. So you have to use a lot of atmospheric perspective instead of size, because of the huge difference between the boats at the very end and the ones that are closer to us. And so on a next step, I actually was seeing poles reflected both on the back pier and also on the front pier. And I did the reflections of the light that correspond to those masts that I was seeing in the back. I also worked a bit more on the boats on the left with the masts and some of these lines that are coming through. Honestly, I had no idea which lines corresponded to which boat. So I just painted what I was seeing. I think it came out okay, but I really did not know which boat they belonged to. When I was painting the ones in the back, I realized that that last boat I really don't like. I didn't like the shape of it. I didn't like the fact that because it's the largest one, it just was, to me, it was not good in the composition. But I also realized that the masts I was painting in the back were from boats that were in the other end of the pier. As I mentioned to you, all the upper part of the sea is non-visible. It's really literally busy with boats. And I did want to paint the sea. So after I added some posts and their reflections, I worked a bit more on the shapes of the boats and the lights. I then decided to bring the focus of attention to the very red, they were truly that red, cadmium red canopies on there. I recommend you, if you haven't seen her YouTube videos, Jessica Henry. She is a great virtual tutor. She is fantastic. I've learned a lot from her. And sometimes I like the way that she says, this is kryptonite. Use very little of it. So really, the cadmium red, I didn't even squeeze it on my palette. I just opened the tube and I used the brush to take a little bit of the tube, contained a little bit of the paint on the top of the tube to paint those very bright red. I wanted that to be the focus of attention because it's the people relaxing and they're having fun on a summertime. So I wanted to make that focus of attention, but I do know that maybe the eye is still going around in circles, not knowing exactly what I want to show you. So besides trying to focus with the very bright red, I completed the piers. The top of the piers is white, so I completed the piers, as you can see the posts on the piers, and also the piers that come in between the boats. This was very tricky because the light's coming right from the top, and so they were really very bright, almost white, but not as bluish white as the boats. So I used yellow ochre with white. And then I actually, if you notice, I did remove the posts and the reflections I had in the previous slide on the right, behind the right boat, because they did belong to other boats I was not painting, and they did not make sense, so I removed those. I still did not like that end boat, and so I deleted it. I got rid of it. I painted on top. I painted more of the sea, and now the pier, you can see the complete pier. I put in there some elements of piers that are normally there, and I added a little boy or girl playing with a doggy, and I was sort of trying to point, you know, the child has one hand up, the dog is looking at that hand, and you know, in a way is directing you back, hopefully, to the red canopies of the activity where you see people there chatting and having a nice coffee or a beer or whatever they're having there, but they're having fun. Also, as you can see, some of the white elements on the boats are really yellow ochre with white. They're not white, and the elements of the different boats is actually, I believe, a better composition. You can see a little one speaking in two of them. The reflections now correspond to what we are seeing from the boats, and this is the final rendition. I hope this inspires you to paint. I am, again, you know, I'm an amateur painter. These are acrylics. First time I used linen. I really liked it. I like painting water, which is probably the reason why I paint less boats, more water. And it's really a joy to have this hobby, and I hope I can shed some light and especially make you realize that you should not be afraid of painting. Go ahead, have fun, and paint.